Welcome to ZR Revenge Story. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel right now. Thank you so much for viewing my video today. Please like this video and leave a beautiful comment below to show your support. Now, let's start this intense story. The rain in Portland, Oregon doesn't just fall, it inhabits the city. It wraps itself around the craftsman-style houses, dampens the emerald green lawns, and creates a perpetual gray filter over everything. My name is Arthur Vance. I'm 62, a retired structural engineer. My life, much like this city, had become wrapped in a quiet, persistent grayness ever since my wife Eleanor passed away 4 years ago. A sudden, aggressive cancer took her in less than 3 months. It left a void in our home on Maple Street that no amount of silence could fill. Since then, it was just me and my son, Leo. He's 24 now, a brilliant software developer who works for one of the big tech firms downtown. Leo had always been a quiet kid, inherited my love for blueprints and solitary work, and Eleanor's soft, empathetic eyes. But in the last month, something had shifted in him. The air in our house, usually filled with the comfortable silence of two men living their lives, became heavy with unsaid things. Leo was physically present, but mentally he was miles away. He stopped joining me for our nightly rituals, watching the 6 o'clock news or sharing a simple home-cooked meal. The moment he came through the front door, he'd offer a tired, strained smile and retreat to the 3rd floor. We had converted the large, finished attic into his personal sanctuary years ago, a workspace and bedroom combo where he could code in peace. But now, it felt more like a fortress. I started noticing small, puzzling changes. Leo, who used to survive on takeout and coffee, was suddenly buying extra groceries. I'd see random things in the pantry, boxes of saltine crackers, jars of creamy peanut butter, bulk packs of bottled water, and cartons of long shelf-life milk. When I asked him about it, he didn't even look up from his phone. "Just stocking up, Dad. Late-night coding marathons require fuel," he had said, his voice flat. I wanted to believe him. A father always wants to believe his son, but my engineering mind was trained to spot structural anomalies, and Leo was a walking structural anomaly. He looked exhausted, jumpy. Every creak of the old house made him flinch. I felt a growing knot of unease in my stomach, a premonition that something was fundamentally wrong. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday in mid-October. Leo had left before dawn for a mandatory 3-day corporate retreat in Seattle. I had planned to use the time to do some deep cleaning and yard work. Our regular house cleaner, Martha Gable, a wonderful woman who'd been cleaning our house since Leo was in grade school, arrived at 9 a.m. I gave her the key and headed out to the hardware store on 82nd Avenue to grab some supplies for the garden. At 11:34 a.m., my phone buzzed. The display showed, "Martha, cleaner." I answered on the second ring. "Hey, Martha, something wrong with the vacuum again?" I joked, trying to keep my own creeping anxiety at bay. Her voice, usually loud and cheerful, was a thready whisper, trembling with a raw, unadulterated terror I had never heard before. "Arthur? Arthur, you need to come home, right now." My heart plummeted. "Martha? What's going on? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay," she whispered, and I could hear her taking short, panicked breaths. "Arthur, I was on the 2nd floor, vacuuming the hallway near the stairs, and I heard it. From the attic, Arthur, above me." My hand tightened on the shopping cart. "What did you hear, Martha?" "A scream," she said, the word choking in her throat. "It was a girl's scream, Arthur, muffled, like she was trying to hide it, but it was so pained. I've never heard a sound like that. Arthur, is there someone else in the house?" I froze. Time seemed to warp. The fluorescent lights of the hardware store became blinding. Dropping the bag of potting soil, I didn't even stop to explain. I bolted for my truck. "Martha, Get out of the house, now. Stay on the porch, but get out. I'm on my way." The 15-minute drive home felt like an eternity. 1,000 terrifying scenarios replayed in my mind. Was my son a monster? Had he done something unspeakable? The Leo I knew, the one who cried when his goldfish died at age 8, couldn't be a kidnapper. But the news was always full of the quiet neighbor who had a dark secret. When I pulled onto Maple Street, I saw Martha sitting on the front porch steps, her knees pulled to her chest, her face pale as a ghost. I parked the truck haphazardly on the curb and ran up to her. "Are you sure, Martha? A scream?" She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, Arthur, it came from the attic, I'm positive." I told her to go home, to rest. I promised I would call her. With a deep, trembling breath, I unlocked the front door and stepped into the suffocating silence of my own home. I walked up the stairs, my boots thudding against the carpet, each sound echoing the hammering in my chest. First floor, second floor. I stood before the door to the third-floor attic. It was locked from the outside. A new, heavy-duty padlock had been installed, a lock I had never seen. My son had locked his room. He had never done that, not once. My engineering mind kicked into gear. A locked door on the third floor meant limited exits. I grabbed the spare keyring from my bedroom, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped it twice. But the padlock key was a special type. None of mine worked. I wasn't waiting. Frustration and terror boiled over. I went back downstairs, grabbed my sledgehammer from the garage, and returned. With one powerful, desperate swing, I shattered the wood around the padlock. The door swung open. The attic was dimly lit. The air was thick and stale, smelling of old paper, code-fueled sweat, and a hint of lavender. I stepped in, my eyes scanning the shadows. Leo's desk, covered with monitors and energy drink cans, was on the left. His unmade bed was in the center. But the sound hadn't come from there. In the far corner, tucked behind a wall of old storage boxes Eleanor had packed years ago, was a small space. I moved the boxes. There, on a mattress pulled directly onto the wooden floor, sat a girl. She couldn't have been older than 19. She was wearing one of Leo's oversized college hoodies, the sleeves rolled up multiple times. Her knees were pulled up tight to her chest, and her face, illuminated by the faint light from the small dormer window, was a mask of sheer, paralyzing terror. The scream Martha had heard was likely a nightmare or a panic attack, but when the girl saw me, she didn't scream. She let out a small, choked sob and scrambled backward, pressing herself hard against the cold brick chimney wall. Her eyes, wide and dilated, locked onto mine. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, barely audible. "Please don't send me back. I'll be good. Please." I dropped the sledgehammer. It clattered loudly on the floor, the sound making her flinch violently and bury her face in her knees. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my entire reality fracturing. This wasn't a crime scene out of a horror movie. This was a child. A terrified, broken child hidden in my son's room. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart to slow down, forcing my engineer's logic to take over. This girl needed help, not a panicked old man. I sat down on a wooden storage crate, several feet away from her, making sure my body language was non-threatening. I spoke softly, the way I used to speak to Leo when he was a child and had a nightmare. "I am Arthur," I said, my voice steady but gentle. "I am Leo's father. I live here, downstairs. Nobody is going to hurt you." It took hours, 2 long, agonizing hours of gentle reassurance, of me bringing her a glass of water and a plate of real food from downstairs, before she finally lowered her guard. She ate the sandwich as if she hadn't tasted real food in weeks. Her name was Chloe. Chloe was a runaway. She hadn't been kidnapped. She had escaped. She'd told me a story that made my blood run cold. She had been bouncing around the foster care system for years, ever since her mother passed away and her father disappeared. Her last placement, a home in a rural town 2 hours away, was a nightmare. The foster parents treated the children as nothing more than paychecks from the state. The foster father was an abusive alcoholic. She had met Leo at a small, independent coffee shop where she worked a part-time shift, trying to save enough money to escape. Leo, with his quiet nature and big, bleeding heart, had become a regular. They had struck up a friendship. He was the first person in years who had actually listened to her. 11 days ago, her foster father had come home in a rage. He had threatened her, cornered her in the kitchen. Terrified, she had climbed out of her bedroom window and run. She had nowhere to go, no family to call. She had only one person she felt she could trust, Leo. She had called him, sobbing, from a payphone near the bus station. Leo, in his youthful, naive, and fiercely protective mind, made a decision. He knew that if he took her to the police or social services, she might be sent right back to that toxic environment while the bureaucracy sorted itself out. He couldn't let that happen. So he did the only thing he could think of. He brought her to Maple Street. He hid her in the attic, intending to keep her safe while he figured out a way to get her legal help or a safe place to live. He hadn't told me because he knew I was a man who respected the rules. He was terrified I would turn her in. My anger at my son's reckless, illegal decision melted into a profound, aching pride mixed with absolute terror for his future. This was Eleanor's heart in him. Eleanor, who had once adopted a stray cat with a broken leg and nursed it back to health for months, always said, "We protect people who can't protect themselves, Arthur. That's our job." That evening, I called Leo on his cell phone. "Leo, you need to come home, right now." My voice was different. He knew it wasn't a request. He was back by 8 p.m., his face streaked with exhaustion and worry. When he walked into the living room and saw me sitting there with Chloe, who was wrapped in a blanket I had given her, he stopped dead in his tracks. His face went completely white. He looked at me, then at her, and then he just broke. The strong, tech-savvy son I knew collapsed to his knees on the carpet, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I'm sorry," he sobbed, putting his head in his hands. "I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't let them hurt her. She has nobody, Dad, nobody. She reminded me of Mom. Mom always said—" "I know, Leo," I whispered, getting up and putting a hand on his shoulder. "I know what your mother would have said." The next 72 hours were a blur of intense, emotional conversations, strategy sessions, and desperate calls. I made it clear to Leo that what he did was incredibly dangerous and legally wrong, but I also let him know I understood his heart. We couldn't keep her here. That was harboring a minor, but we couldn't just throw her back to the wolves. I called an old friend from my college days, Marcus Thorne, who was now a prominent family lawyer in Portland. I told him the situation, minus the illegal harboring part at first, framing it as a runaway case we were trying to help. Marcus maneuvered through the legal red tape with the skill of a grand master. We didn't report a kidnapping. Instead, we initiated a protective custody case documenting the abuse Chloe had suffered. Because I was a respected citizen with no criminal record, and with Marcus's help, we managed to get Chloe placed into a vetted, temporary safe house for girls while her case was investigated. Leo faced legal hurdles and community service for his actions, but with Marcus's defense, he avoided jail time. The case against the abusive foster parents was opened, and Chloe's testimony was powerful. The day Chloe left our house on Maple Street to go to the new facility, she stood on our porch, the same porch where Martha had sat in terror days ago. Chloe wasn't the terrified girl from the attic anymore. She looked at Leo, then at me. "Thank you," she said to me, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips, her eyes clear. "Thank you for hearing my screams, and thank you for listening to them." As her car pulled away, Leo put his arm around my shoulder. I could feel the tension that had gripped him for weeks finally release. We had a broken house, a lot of legal fees, and a quiet attic, but for the first time in 4 years, the air in our home felt light again. We had saved a life, and in doing so, we had saved ourselves from the crushing grief that had kept us apart. We had brought a child out of the shadows, and she had brought the light back into our home.
I hope you loved this story. Please hit that like button and leave a sweet comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more real, raw, and family-centered drama. See you in the next video.